Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon over there on the East Coast. My name is Andy Karuza. I'm with NachoNacho, and today we have Elise here with Indeed. And without further ado, we would love if you could introduce yourself, your company, which I think everybody knows, but love to hear it from you, and a little bit more about your background.
For sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Elise Marcotte. I am the global lead for enterprise marketing talent intelligence at Indeed. You must have seen Indeed at some point, but it's the world's leading job site helping people get jobs by connecting talent and employers through search, matching, and hiring solutions. And our mission is to help people get jobs, and that's what gets me up in the morning. Very excited to be joining this webinar with you, Andy, today. And my background, very, I think, aligned with what we're going to be talking about. So I'm a two-time Olympian in the sport of synchronized swimming, now long retired, but then studied marketing and dived into marketing as a professional. And I can really see how important that is coming out of sports and how the skills carry along your career, whatever background you have.
Yep. Any ambitions to get back into it?
Yeah. Not in the pool. I also coach as a hobby job, I call it. But so I'm still very deeply involved in the sports to help the next generation. So
nice. So you're at the wise woman phase. You're imparting all the knowledge on the next generation.
We try.
Nice. And I guess what kind of hiring trends are you seeing today, and what that business leader should be aware of?
Something that comes out in a lot of the conversation that we have with the leaders across the world, really, not just, I'm based in Canada, so not just in Canada, or in the US, is that skills first adoption is accelerating. So we can see businesses and on the other side, the job seeker, we can see the disconnect of, they're looking for job seeker with more of these capacity. And then on the other side, you've got a job seeker that they're looking for jobs. And then there's a little bit of a mismatch. So that skills first, I think, is really how we can bridge that gap. We obviously see the demand volatility and the internal mobility moving quite a bit. So a lot of companies are looking, how can we help the people we currently have in the business progress to the next stage? So we see a lot of that internal mobility discussions happening. And then, it would be hard not to talk about AI, but how do we make sure that we reskill, upskill along with AI to make teams more productive as well?
What kind of AI skills in particular do you see particularly helpful for companies?
I think it's more just what's it called? The literacy, AI literacy. So being able to, know when to use the various tools, but also just the curiosity of sometimes trying new things or implementing new things within the process. So often, processes have been the same way for the last 5-10 years. Why would you change them? Why would we even think of automating something that has been done and it's been working? So it's taking the time to pause and seeing, okay, which automation can we make? What team needs to be engaged to make this happen? Yes, it's going to take a little bit more time up front, but then you'll save much more in the end. So I think literacy and then just that curiosity of rethinking things to change it. And then obviously the change management that comes from that.
Yep. I'm open to try the latest and greatest tools as they come out. And there's a lot of them coming out now. Yeah,
it's there's no lack of tools out there. That's for sure.
And also, more importantly, knowing when not to use AI too, because sometimes you could see some people over relying on it, especially in cold email marketing. I get these emails that are definitely written all automated through and through. I definitely do not respond to them.
Yeah, the authenticity definitely, I think, remains important, and the human touch when the human touch is needed. So we see that obviously a lot through the recruiting process. We want to create efficiency with AI, but you also want to make sure that you can showcase your company as you want it to be showcased to the candidates. And you want to make sure that the candidate feels good about the experience, whether they get the job or not at the end, because that employer branding, I think, will kick in. And the person, the human that did apply for the role, will left with some feelings about the company that they went through. So just like you're saying about, those cold marketing emails, they leave you with the feeling of ugh, I don't like that company as much anymore because it was just a robot.
Yep.
So I think that's really important.
Authenticity is coming back in a big way, I believe. So have you guys had any issues or seen any issues with people using AI, maybe during the hiring process, that you might want to flag for people to look out for?
It's been on both ways. I have had the experience as a hiring manager as well to have job seekers just be reading. You ask them the questions and you can tell there's a little bit of a delay because probably they're just waiting to get fed whatever AI is going to say, this is the best answer. So I think it's like we were just saying, like that authenticity. And yes, there's all these tools to make us smarter, to make us move faster. But at the end of the day, they want to see, are you the person that can do the job? Are you the one that will go and get those answers? And it's okay to not know everything. We have tools to go and figure out things, but do you have the hustle? Do you have the work ethic? So I think for the hiring process, as much on the job seeker side, because to some extent everyone's a job seeker, and then on the other side, on the employer, is just identifying which part is important to be automatized and which part is important to remain more with that human touch through the process.
Yep. Yeah, I believe AI is best used if it's enhancing, not replacing skills that you don't have.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that.
And so earlier you mentioned skills first hiring, and what, could you maybe dive into what that really means, and how does it differ from like traditional role based or maybe degree based hiring? Like if you're from Harvard, like, you sit at a higher pedigree and people just want to hire you right away. But now that's kind of shifting towards more specific skills and whatnot. Could you maybe dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. And that's such a good question. And it does, I think, require a minute to think, okay, what does it mean and how does it apply? Because we don't want to discredit people that also have worked really hard to get those degrees, right? It's just making sure that we allow the different upbringing potentially to make sure that those can also have that chance to go forward. So it would be defining the roles by tangible skills and proficiencies, not just the titles, not just the degrees. And if you start paying attention, you'll see people like in job descriptions, sometimes you'll see, you need to have, for an accountant, you need to make sure you have experience in retail. But really for the accounting job, is it okay if they come from oil and gas, for example? Probably, right? So it could be as simple as that. Or on the other side, to some extent, I think I may be a decent example for that. Competed in 2 Olympics, traveled the world. I was the team captain on the duet. Like I did a lot of the PR for Canada. When it was time for me to go find my first job, I would make it to the last interview. And then at the end, they'd be like, well, but it is your first job. You've never had this, sitting down in 9 to 5 before. It's like, yes, but so often, like, that experience is just making sure that we recognize that, to a much simpler one for people that hire hourly worker, for example, our babysitter. Crisis management, being able to think on your feet, being creative, like how does that relate into another type of role after? So it's thinking beyond just the typical experience and thinking what are the skills that person developed within the role they were doing, and how does that relate to the role that the company is hiring for?
Yeah, and there's a lot of tangential skills that you should look for that can apply as well. So obviously, somebody like an Olympian like yourself probably has a work ethic.
You think so? I hope so.
I hope so. Yeah, definitely probably do. So you don't get to that level without, a lot of work, right? And discipline. So, those are some skills you could look at right away that might not be tangential, directly related to the job that you're hiring for, but you could say, hey, this person's probably going to work hard and they're probably reliable. So that's a couple bonus points right there.
Exactly. And it's really like hire for that capability and grow for context, especially in the workforce that we're in right now. Like we do need to be creative. And I think that's where those skills, those intangible skills, I think kick in even further, because there's a lot that can be learned. And, learning is so democratized right now. It is easy to learn right now if you have someone that's curious and keen.
Yeah, true. So you're really saying what I'm hearing from you is like soft skills are really important.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what kind of trends do you see in the future? Soft skills are going to continue to become more important. How do you define what a future-proof hiring strategy will look like in 2026 and beyond?
Yeah. And I've seen organizations already starting this work. So it's not just great concepts that are not doable. So one thing that I'd recommend, so it's finding that durable core. So start working on that skills taxonomy. What is it for the role that you need to have to be successful? So, and then checking what assessment method can you have to prove that person has those skills. The feedback loops as well, I think from performance can help if you're looking within internal mobility, but really looking at the skill set, and then instead of looking at past experience, like we need this person to have had 10 years of project management? Is
Yep.
it that, or do they have to have been able to lead with a lot of cross-functional team in a global context, or vice versa? So really doubling down on the skills taxonomy, I think, is a good spot to start.
Yep. The more specific their skills relate to your company and your particular needs for that role.
Yeah, exactly.
And how do you guys define the importance of maybe prior success and like work that they've done? How would you recommend for job seekers how they can actually tailor their resume to really speak a story about their actual results that they've done, rather than just, like you mentioned, saying, "Oh, I worked at a company for 10 years." Okay, so what? What did you do for those people?
For sure. I think that, and it is always a challenge whenever you try to redo your resume. First, most people will procrastinate for quite some time. Thankfully, I think AI helps a lot to get those ideas going. And it might just be to have a conversation with AI to be like, here's my experience, doing this job, and I'll take the babysitter for another second. Like, here's what I was doing: planning activities, managing crisis, change a plan or hospital visit, or like whatever it is, managing two parents. And discussing that and being like, help me find what the skills are, so that after that you can build that, because yes, within the resume, but you all are also prepare for that first interview. So how can you display, there's often contextual interviews, so like, how can you display this skill set within an example that's measurable and that the person will relate to within their environment? So I think it's very much double downing on that skill set. And like we were saying, the soft skills are really, I think, what can make the difference for a lot of the jobs. It depends, obviously. Like, you want your doctor to have the right education, but there are some other jobs that allow more flexibility, and I think that's where we have to maybe think about it twice.
Yep. So what are the limitations for like a resume-driven or credential-driven hiring only? Like you said, it's probably you're missing the soft skills right off the bat, but any other thoughts on that?
And I think it can penalize the non-linear careers. Andy, you're a good example too. Like, your career has been everything except linear. So
You checked my profile out.
Sure did. But like, you can probably talk about this too. Like, it doesn't have, like, rarely do you see someone that has a nice straight line that you go from, you study and then you become a coordinator, then a manager, then a director, then a VP. Like, not everyone does that. And that's not what everyone wants either. So it might be like grabbing experiences from different spheres. It might be not job hopping, but changing industry. And then like your experience, like shares yours a bit more for.
Yep. Oh, sorry, I broke off.
But yeah, no worries. Share your experience for a second too, because I think it's super interesting and different.
Yes, my experience when I was in college had an event company, and I used social media to kind of, when it was first coming out, to really organize those events. That was my first company. And then from that, started an agency because I developed the skills for social media, and then kind of developed a lot of other marketing services alongside that. How to do web development, everything there. I've done over the years worked with and brought to market a lot of different products. I've done web apps, mobile apps, even IoT products. And then now came to NachoNacho as a former founder myself, and I get to work with a lot of founders and leaders in the industry and kind of, collaborate with people just like me. So it's kind of my story arc, I guess.
Yeah, and you're a webinar host, so who knows what's going to happen next? You might end up on TV, Andy.
I've done that a few times, but not as good as other people. I think they're way better than it at me. I don't even know how to get into some of the stuff I do sometimes.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Absolutely. And I guess, what tips would you recommend for job seekers to get ready for their interviews? Any particular tips there?
I think it's very much contextual, right? So depending on the type of job. See, my internet is struggling a bit, but just confirming. What's that?
Yeah, we have a big snowstorm that came through Canada. Probably hit you too.
So I would say, like, just making sure that you're practicing. And I'll make the parallel with high performance sport here. An interview is a little bit of a performance in so many ways. So practice. We have the tools right now available out there to go back and forth and simulate interviews. Practice, because your first one's never going to be as good as your 5th one or your 10th one. So put yourself in context depending who's interviewing you, and get those stories ready on what skills did you demonstrate, what did you do, who was involved, what is the outcome, and get that story lined up, practice it, get it better, and then depending on the jobs interviews that you'll have, you'll see how you need to navigate that. As an athlete, we did tons of PR training, and I loved how that skill is so transferable to job interviews, because it's being ready for any questions and being quick on your feet, but also making sure you take a moment to think about what you'll answer. So.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. I don't think a lot of people think about the story of who they are. So that if they're going through the hiring process, they're talking more about what they do, but not the why for what they've done their entire career and what they actually want to do next. But if you do a really good job telling that story about how you're such a unique person, have these unique capabilities and skills that nobody else has, that resonates a lot better with somebody that would want to hire you.
Totally. And that first question of tell me about you in 2 minutes, it's so fascinating, because either people go on the lifelong stories of 20 minutes or they're too brief and there's not enough. So that question will come at some point. If not in a job interview, it will happen at dinner with new people. So practice that 2 minutes. What is it? Who are you? What do you stand for? What's important for you? That's something that is worth, I think, crafting and working on with intention.
Any other questions that hiring managers should ask to try to assess these traits about the person?
I think it's always interesting to look beyond just the work experience of tell me something that we haven't talked about yet. What makes you special? What makes you stand out? What's a fun experience? There's 2 questions that a colleague and I ask in an interview process, just to see how people are when they're uncomfortable. What animal would you be? So people are didn't think about that. So just putting them on the spot is an interesting one. And then other ones if you won $1 million, what would you do? Just to see where people's priorities are and how they think. So it just gives, there's all of the usual questions that are obviously very important to see, can they do the job? And then at the end, just having a little bit more of that natural who they are as a human being to see how they stand out.
We're definitely a pro. So I guess what are hiring companies typically over-index for that you'd recommend they don't? Perhaps title. We talked about pedigree and the university they went to probably gets over-indexed as well. Anything else that hiring managers should consider when they're looking at a resume or interviewing somebody so they don't fall into those traps?
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if it's necessarily a trap, but it's just knowing that there's a bias associated with it. One could be with, past employers. There's employers that, we don't need to name, but if you've worked there, people are ooh, you worked there. So it kind of makes that person stand out a little bit more. But yet maybe someone that worked at the startup, like you, Andy, would actually be better for a role like this versus someone that worked in another known organization. So that's one. And the other one is the schools. And I think even more probably in the US than elsewhere, or in Canada, for example. But I think that obviously the Ivy League school, they're hard to get into, but also hard to afford. So by default, it becomes a bias on who can get access to such school. And then you're discrediting a bunch of other people's if you just look at schools. So just something to be aware of. It doesn't mean don't look at schools. It just means be aware that some great candidate might also show from, college that you never heard of. And that's okay. They might be very, very good. A lot of grit.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot could happen with, somebody working at a big company you could say a Microsoft. Love those guys, by the way. But you could say, oh, wow, he worked at Microsoft. Well, he didn't co-found the company, but
yeah.
Maybe they did a really good job in their particular role, but there's a big team behind it and everything. Whereas maybe somebody, like you mentioned, from a startup might do more from more of the 0 to 1 and, maybe be able to wear a bunch of different hats. Right. So just being able to look past the titles of the company or even the titles they had at those companies too, to just see the underlying skills and capabilities of the person.
For sure. The other thing to look for too that you made me think of is the years of experience. Because it's not always, people move at different speeds, and some may be very quick learn and within 2 years they can get the experience because they've been on extra projects, Or on the other side, people may need a longer experience. So you may think, oh, are they being stale because they've been in the same role for so long? So just, again, it's consciousness of the bias that could exist. And then the last piece is, the title mismatch. There's a lot of strange titles out there. So just be aware that, and that's the part of the AI to just be careful with as well. If you have AI to review the resume as the first draft, is just, being careful that if you're looking for an engineer, someone that is an automation, machine learning analyst might actually, have the experience over the engineer, for example. So just being, again, consciousness of those little differences that could have an impact, and something to look for, like obviously bias of sport here, but like, people that did high performance sport often will bring some of those skills to the workplace. People that work in the military, parents, there's a lot that goes with being, and that's something to be careful of as well. Someone may have taken, a year off. It's not off, but a parental leave of sorts, and there may be a gap in their resume, and that's okay. They've developed other skills during that time. So just, again, awareness around these unusual, if you want, candidates, but they might be some gold mine for your organization.
Yep. What about like overinflation of, maybe degree or title or role they've had at a previous company? What kind of flags would you look for? Indicators would you look for as somebody hiring somebody else to see if they're maybe overinflating what their success story is?
Yeah, for sure. And, we see sometimes that, and we've kind of touched on that with the other questions, but job seekers can face underemployment or blocked mobility because employers are seeing, they hire people like them that went to the same school, that have the same experience. And what on the other side, and I don't have the percentage in mind right now, but we do see that often with not unusual hiring, but with hiring that are maybe outside of the usual, like, this exact degree, people will stay longer. So the employee will stay longer at the company. You've got more of that loyalty. I have a case in Canada that the business did a study. They hired, that was during COVID when they needed more customer service agents. And normally they would only hire people with degree, but for that time they really needed more. So they took the degree component out and they found all of their people for their customer service. And what they found after is that those people stayed much longer in the organization. So the retention was much stronger because probably the one that got hired felt that much more thankful to have this opportunity. There was more of loyalty that was developed between the organization and the employees.
Yep. Yeah. Sometimes I've seen not going to name names, but I've seen like engineers jumping between companies just because they get a better offer like every single year. So really hard to build a team if you have people moving in and out all the time.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So that's definitely a component, is when you think, yes, the short term and the comfort of hiring someone that fits versus having someone that maybe brings a different culture or just a different experience. They'll think about problems differently, and they'll have other ways to work around those problems and find a solution. And then, like you said, then they might also last longer because hiring to fill up a role of someone that left is pretty expensive versus taking a little bit more time to hire the right person.
Yeah, and it's just disruptive to the team as well too. You're going to want somebody that's going to be committed with you for a good amount of time to actually build what you're working on together. So
for sure.
So I guess what skills should companies prioritize? Are you looking for more technical skills, transferable skills? Like you mentioned, like an analyst might be able to perform the role, but the title mismatch might be there. Or emerging skills like AI is obviously a big one. How do you kind of rank those in terms of importance?
It will, I think, obviously depend on the role. So when we talked earlier about like how can companies prepare themselves for 26 and how does that look like, I think looking at like what skills are the most needed. If we look at the technical, so like that's what is role critical, what is measurable. So there's always going to be some of those. So like start with those ones because they're probably the easiest to identify. Then look at what's transferable. The analytical, the problem solving. And then in roles that are, let's say, highly cross-functional, maybe the behavioral skills are highly important. So you need to be able to collaborate. You need to be able to work under a lot of complex environment. You need to be able to own the projects, programs, whichever you're working on. And then on the emerging tool, again, depending the type of business and the type of role, the AI tooling that's available. So like, did the person work with those before or something similar? And just that general literacy of AI, I think is important, because it's quite interesting. And I'm sure you've interviewed some candidates as well, that you ask them about like, how do you use AI in your day-to-day? And some use it tons in so many different spheres, and some are like, oh no, I'm scared, like not using anything. So depending for the type of role, you may want to know a little bit more about where that person sits.
Yep. I guess, so what role does AI play in helping surface these skills that the person might have beyond what's listed on the resume? Do you guys use AI for any analysis of their resume and their portfolio?
AI is embedded through all of Indeed's workflow, really, once the job seeker come onto the site, and same thing on the employer side. So the technology that helps the matching algorithm in the back is very much AI based, and more focused towards that skills base as well, through the different product that Indeed offers. So that's really, and we see, because we hear it from employers, right? Like this, Indeed didn't come out with this because that's now available. It's because the world is shifting toward that skills first, and those transferable skills, and making sure that the right person in the right role also lasts longer, they're happier, they're healthier. Like it's that whole machine that goes through. But back to your AI question, AI is embedded into everything that Indeed does for the matching component, for Career Scout and Talent Scout. So definitely go look at, and can post those in the chat as well for people to look at.
Absolutely. And then what would you recommend for hiring companies to be able to utilize, I guess, skills first approach in terms of how they structure their job descriptions? Would you have any tips there?
Yeah, for sure. I think that pedigree checklist to like the must-have skills and the proficiency level. So like Canadian French speaking as the first one. So if there's something I said that you're like, what did she say there? So like, I need to speak English for my role. So like that's not just a must-have. Like you absolutely need it to have the role. You can have the success outcomes at the 90, 180 days. It could be some sample problems, the tools used, the flexibilities, how the skills will be acquired. We've got a lot of hiring for, either truck driver or bus drivers, or those that are almost evergreen positions. And a lot of those positions, often the company is going to say, like, come to us, we will, we'll walk you through this process to get the different licenses that you need to be able to do this job. So I think there's that clarity and transparency about what the company will do for the person as well, if you want to appeal people.
Definitely. And what kind of roles are you seeing becoming more popular in 2026?
I'd have to come back to you on that one. It depends. Like in the regions, I think is so important to what industries are there. So I can talk more to which jobs are harder to find, like to find people for, like which job are in super high demands. Like obviously everything in healthcare, and then a lot of the technical jobs, like the heavy machinery technicians, like those jobs, it's hard to find people within the business side. Go ahead.
I feel like a lot of blue collar jobs have had a big comeback over the last couple of years.
Definitely, because I haven't. I feel like this is in progress. I've seen some construction company working on like framing parts of a house or whatnot with robotization and automation, but yet like it's going to be a while before a robot can do plumbing at your house. So definitely a lot of the trades jobs are hot jobs. And then on the other side, more on the business side, like you and I are sitting on, it seems like it will depend on what the business needs are, but the consistency is how curious people are, those transferable skills, the collaboration, like that seems to be the consistent marker throughout all of the jobs, is to make sure that the people you hire have potential for internal mobility as well. They're not just one. I don't know how that will translate, but one show pony. Like it's not just one trick pony. Not sure which one, but you need to be able to have more than one trick that you're able to do.
You got it right. It's one trick pony.
One trick pony.
Term, I think it is. But you guys are Canadians. You guys are basically cousins or brothers or sisters. I mean, we're neighbors and all. So you guys can take the term now if you haven't used it already. Nice. So tell me, what's next for Indeed? What are you looking forward to over there at the company? Are you guys working on any cool new features or exciting updates? And then, of course, yourself. What's next for you?
Yeah, for sure. So on Indeed side, the whole goal is we stick to our mission, helping people get jobs. And how do we do that for the next months ahead is really much with the job matching. So we want to make sure that we're embedded into the talent lifecycle, from the job ads, the sourcing, the screening, the mobility. So helping companies make sure they find the right talent, and then helping job seekers find those jobs that are meaningful to them, to companies that are meaningful to them, whether if it's a startup or a big Fortune 500 organization. On my side, love my role working with the global team. I love being in the middle between country marketing and enterprise marketing. Next to come, just more challenges. Just keep on those challenges coming my way. I love that part at Indeed, how the company's evolving, and there's so many interesting projects and partners to work with to talk about what we do. And at the end of the day, help companies and help job seekers. To me, that's very, very important. The meaning behind the role, that we do help people get jobs, that speaks to me a lot. And just excited for what's to come, and glad to be a part of it. What about you? What's on your side? What's next for you?
Oh man, well, maybe I got to pick it up again. But I was studying French during COVID, so I'm pretty good at reading it, but terrible at speaking it still. So I think I'm probably going to get back on that and at least try to say that I know another language. I got English, but definitely could use some French. I know Spanish too. I could read it, but I think knowing more languages, especially as I like to travel around the world a lot too. So that kind of stuff does come in handy.
Awesome.
Well, sounds good. Elise, thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody can find out more about Indeed at Indeed.com. Of course, you know that. Reputable company here. So great speaking with you today. And also, for anybody watching this interview, definitely go to NachoNacho as well. We have a special offer for Indeed. It's, I believe, a $200 credit. So go check that out today and get your hiring done right by going through Indeed. Thank you again, Elise.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. Bye, everyone.